Today, let's talk about the INFJ God complex. It's something that people talk about on the internet. It definitely is. And it's something that is super important for us INFJs to look into because we're so not aware of it. I definitely wasn't, and I was doing the same things over and over again. And then I was wondering why people were either mad at me, or why some people felt I was arrogant, or why people continuously tried to test me. But the truth is that we fall victim to this God complex, and that's not even something that makes other people look at us from a way of, oh, that person thinks like they're cooler than everybody else. But it's actually our savior complex that has a lot to do with it. And through that, we're not only alienating other people, we're actually stripping ourselves from our humanity. And it's one of those aspects that is hindering us to experience life fully. It's one of those things that is hindering us to receive love. It's one of those things that is hindering us from creating our INFJ epic life. So let's talk about it, and without judgment, taking in the information and to really make the choice of, is this something I want to continuously feed? And is part of it maybe even super important and like it's something worth holding on to? And what are the lessons? What are the triggers? How does that whole thing show up in relationships? Before we get started, remember, if you haven't done this so far, to download the free poster to your INFJ epic life. And if you want to take to the next level, then get the INFJ epic life audio guide. And keep that in mind. Creating your INFJ epic life is actually stepping out of your God complex, believe it or not. So you're going to feel way better, but you're stepping down into your humanity and you're making your vision a reality. Everything you need to know, you can find in the links in the description. So the INFJ God complex is not what it sounds like at first sight, because at first sight, it sounds like, oh, I'm going to be this like influencer that everybody looks up to and thinks like, oh, they're so great. And this typical archetype of the cheerleader or the football player, and everybody's flocking to them. This is not the typical INFJ journey. It's not something that we aspire to. It's not something that we want. And we don't really have any ambition to go there because it just doesn't feed the way our mind works. So this is the typical, oh, this is how an alpha is portrayed in society. And, at first sight, we might think as INFJs, okay, I'm definitely not that. Like, I'm not thinking that I'm something great because, people are flocking to me based on playing this image of this popular person. And because of that, we go through life with the illusion that we don't have a God complex, that we don't think that we're better than other people. Actually, it's the other way around. We think I need to give 70% into a relationship in order to get 30 back. How can that be a God complex? Aren't we like martyrs? But that's where the God complex comes actually in. Because what we're saying is everybody else plays by the same rules. Everybody else deserves to be treated good. We can take more. We don't need to play by those rules. We're actually putting ourselves out of the game. We're going to be observers. We're going to be the ones who have so much to give and who understand others so well that we don't need to protect ourselves. We can give, and we talk to a person in a way of, I know that you're suffering. I know that you have insecurities, and I'm not judging you for it. It's all good. First off, that person will never ever accept your help. They will think you're arrogant. They will think like, who do you think you are telling me what is good for me? And they will try to put you to the ground. Not because they're bad people, not because you did something so horribly wrong, but if people cannot face that within them, they're definitely not going to allow a person who they haven't even asked for help to, fix them. And that in itself makes other people feel like we're arrogant. That makes other people feel like, oh, that person has a God complex. Who do they think they are that they think they know best and therefore they're going to save me? So that doesn't mean that we might not know best, right? It might not even mean that we don't know that they're doing something that is unhealthy for them. But what we're saying is the following. I'm assigning myself to the person who's going to save them because no one else will. They are not going to save themselves. Nobody else is able to see what they're doing. So I'm going to be the one. And that in itself is a God complex. Because yes, you might be able to save them, but at what price? And one thing we definitely have learned is people cannot change their behavior. People cannot be fixed or saved if they don't want to. Everybody has to have a choice. So every single person has the prerogative to decide their fate. And that means doing things that are unhealthy for them or doing things that are healthy for them. And some people need to go down the road of doing things that are unhealthy for them over and over and over again until they themselves recognize, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to change. And you know who else needs to do that? We do. So I can tell you, I held on to this image of me of being the savior because that's the thing that made me feel like I'm worth something. Although that person didn't want to, although that person put me down, whatever it may be, I continuously did that without thinking about all of the self-sabotaging things that I'm doing. So I was just focusing on that person and thinking, you're doing so much self-harm here. Like, look at that. Like, really change something, and I'm going to stay here and I'm going to save you. But what was I doing in that moment? What are so many INFJs doing in that moment? We're self-sabotaging. We're saying, I want to save that person so much. I want to stay in my God complex, which is, a sense of my ego that makes me feel like powerful. And I'm willing to do that, although I'm continuously staying in situationships where I'm not being appreciated, where a person is, neglecting me, where a person is abusing me, and all of that. We're doing this because we have the illusion that they will recognize it at some point, because we think we can sacrifice more than they're able to actually continue to absorb, that they are going to get it before we have to give up. But they're not. They're not. It never works this way. And it's not because, you just weren't strong enough. It's just, how things work. If you have a taker and a giver, it always is the giver who has to stop. The taker will always take, particularly a person who actually has like a hole in themselves, and whatever comes from the outside, it will never be able to fill them up, because the only thing that can really fill them up is for them to set like a healthy boundary and fill themselves up. So if we give to other people, we're actually doing the same thing. We are having a hole in ourselves, trying to fill it by saying, I'm giving so much of you, and then hopefully something will fill this void in myself that makes me feel worthless. That person will finally see everything I was willing to do for them, and then I will feel whole. So how do we get out of this? Well, we have to understand that we have to get ourselves off that pedestal a little bit. And a pedestal from the perspective of, I am human. I'm like everybody else. I might be different in a sense of, maybe there's only 1% of me. But when I compare myself to an individual person, I'm different like they're different, right? If you have, let's say, an ISFJ who's very common, or let's say an ISTJ, and then you have an INFJ, and you just look at those two people in comparison to each other, we're both just different. That's it. Even if you have two INFJs, they're different. But you get it for this example. It does not matter that there's so many more of you in this world than there are of me. When it comes to both of us, we all have the same rights. We all have the same privileges, and we all have the choice of what we're going to do with our lives. And to really take ourselves off that pedestal of, I can give up so much of myself and still be okay. Because yes, you can. You can, but where's that leading you? Nowhere that feels good. The thing that is really going to make us feel good is to understand that we are vulnerable. How other people make us feel will have an effect on us. We can't go through life thinking we're invincible, because we're not. And sometimes you need to go through a lot of pain to understand that. And this is not just us, like you see this with everybody. People have to get to a place where they recognize, I need to change how I approach life. I need to change the way I interact with other people, because the way I'm, doing life right now isn't getting me the results that I want. And one of those things is really understanding that we do have a God complex, that this isn't coming from a place of simply, I just want to give to others because I'm a good person, but also coming from a place of, I don't want to become human, because being human is messy. I rather stay in the clouds, and I rather stay in this, savior mode and appoint myself, this God that can, help everybody else. And I don't need to protect myself. I can stay in abusive situations because I can take the pain and then I can save you. But you cannot. You can take it, for a while, but, at some point it's like, no, like you are human. Your energy will be depleted at some point. There is a reason why the INFJ door slam is like this thing. This is not something that is like the stereotype for every type. This is a stereotype for the INFJ because of exactly that. We can take so much, but at some point, it will catch up to us. No matter how much you can give, you will also get exhausted. So think about, let's say, an ESTP, right? They're all about like this bulldozer energy. I can give, and do, and like conquer, conquer, conquer. Like they're not depleting themselves. They're just doing, right? And so they look around and see, I'm so much more energetic than everybody around. I can really get to and do things and do all of that. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a limit. It might be somewhere else, but you still have a limit. And the sooner you understand that you're human and that you need to make sure that you don't reach your limits so you can create something long term, the better and happier and more fulfilled you're going to be. And for us INFJs, this God complex comes from the illusion that we can take endlessly others' pain. We can stay in a situation and be completely rational and see, oh, they're suffering, and completely stay neutral to the fact that they continuously put negative energy towards me. I can overlook that. I can, meet them on a spiritual level. I'm going to talk to them from the perspective of, we're just souls in this atmosphere. We're souls having a human experience. And I know that you're suffering, so let's talk here. But we're doing this while not protecting ourselves. And that is where our complex comes from. So if we understand that even we have limits, and some of us have reached those limits, others have not, it is so much easier to then say, okay, I need to change my behavior. I need to look at myself as a human who needs to engage in the real world. And doing this will make us have to face our inferiority complex, which is making life happen without needing other people's, appreciation or input or whatever it may be. Most of the time, we don't want to take action on our own life. We want to attach ourselves to somebody while they're going towards what they want to do. And we're like the counselor, right? So this is like the ideal image when we're not like in our healthiest of, there's a person, and because of my counseling ability, they're going to create this amazing path in their life and they're going to have all of those adventures, and I will live vicariously through them, and it will be justified because the only reason why they were able to get there is because I counseled them. But they will never live the life that you want because you're always going to project, who you want to be and your potential onto them. But your potential and your vision is for you. And we have to then understand, if I'm not going to put myself in this perspective of, I can take so much, then nobody's going to, keep me attached to them because of everything I do for them. Now we're going to play in a different field, which is I need to be loved and liked for me liking myself. And you'll see how your relationships will change. And the people who you used to have close relationships with, those relationships will dissolve because they're all based on you are giving more than you're getting back. And so when we face our inferiority complex, we actually become human. We understand that, I will have difficulties in this life because I have to choose myself. I cannot really depend on, people liking me for what I do for them, because first I have to make sure I'm good, and I have to be the one who carves out my path and creates this holistic version of myself that is not just, this dreamlike state in my mind, but that also creates this bridge to reality that allows me to see every person from the perspective of, you are allowed to make that choice for you. I'm not going to be your savior. I cannot be. I can inspire you, by making sure that I'm making the best choices for myself, and I can offer my help, but it's always up to another person to decide, do I want to take that help or not? And don't think that we know best by saying, I'm going to save you and I'm going to keep you from all that pain, because everybody is going to go down that rabbit hole until they cannot do it anymore. You are the only one who can say, I cannot take any more pain. I need to change something. And we're going to allow people to decide when that is for them. We're not going to make those choices for them and think like, oh, nobody's going to save you, so I will. A person has to want to change themselves. And then if they do, they can look for you for inspiration. They can look for you for guidance. But that's for them to decide. And maybe you're not the one. Maybe they need to experience something else, and that is totally fine. The only thing we really have control over is like saving ourselves, and through that being an example. So let's get away from that God complex, become human, and start playing the game of life. We're not above it. We need to do that. We need to experience life because that's what we're in this world to do. We're here in this world to really engage with the real world and just giving it our flavor and giving it, our identity and our DNA. And every single time you're engaging with reality, it's going to be with this unique DNA and this unique signature of who you are already. So nothing is ever lost. You're going to have an impact on everybody that you meet. It's just a question of, do I want to impact people who don't want my help and is actually going to create more harm and more pain for both sides? Or am I going to make sure that I'm going to prioritize my own peace over everything and my own path? And then no matter what comes into my life can be an addition to that. So these are my 2 cents on that topic. I definitely was a victim to the God complex, and I'm not above thinking that I may fall into this again. We're never going to be completely freed of that. There's always going to be a tendency towards that. But, the more we make it conscious, the more choices we can make to actually balance ourselves out. So remember, if you want some more guidelines, how to create that balance, how to tap into the real world, creating your INFJ Epic Life, then get the INFJ Epic Life formula poster. And if you want to take it deeper, like really understand the concept and start taking action, understand what works for INFJs and what doesn't, because I've worked with thousands of INFJs over the last 10 years, then get the INFJ Epic Life audio guide and it will show you a path forward. So remember, it's never about, oh, there's one path and that's the only path to truth. I can just show you an example of what has worked for me, what has worked for so many INFJs, and it can help you to move forward in creating your unique path. So your INFJ Epic Life on your terms. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in line with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.